The blood wouldn't come out of the marble. Levian Blackmoor stood in the center of his penthouse, staring at the faint rust-colored stain no amount of scrubbing could erase. 3 cleaning crews had tried. 2 had quit when he'd watched them work in silence, arms crossed, jaw tight enough to crack teeth. The 3rd crew knew better than to speak. His phone buzzed. Another security contractor returning his call. Levian answered without greeting. "I need cameras," he said. "Every room, every angle. Hidden, professional grade. Money isn't a concern." The voice on the other end hesitated. "Mr. Blackmoor, for a property this size, we're talking about..." "I didn't ask for a quote. I asked for cameras." Silence. "Installation starts tomorrow," the contractor said. Levian ended the call. Across the room, the wheelchair sat empty near the window. Small, black, built for a child who would never run again. 4 years old. That's how old Milo was when the stairs stopped being stairs and became a weapon. The doctors had used careful words. Spinal trauma, incomplete injury, adaptive mobility. Levian had heard only one word. Paralyzed. His pup, his son, his heir, the only thing in this world that mattered, would never walk again. And it was Levian's fault. Not directly. He hadn't pushed Milo down the stairs, hadn't failed to install railings or left the gate open. But he'd been in a meeting. A meeting about territory disputes and blood debts, and which rival family needed to disappear next. While his pup had been climbing, falling, screaming. By the time Levian reached the hospital, Milo's legs were already gone. Now, 6 weeks later, the penthouse had become something else entirely. A fortress, a cage, a monument to control, built by a man who'd learned too late that power meant nothing if you couldn't protect the ones you loved. Levian walked to the window. The city stretched below him. 3 territories, 7 crime syndicates, countless soldiers who feared his name. None of it mattered. He pressed his palm against the glass. Cold, unyielding. Tomorrow the cameras would go in. Every corner, every hallway, every room where Milo slept, ate, played, cried. Not to spy, to see. Because if anyone ever hurt his pup again, if anyone raised a hand, spoke too sharply, looked at Milo like he was broken instead of healing, Levian would know. And knowing meant control. Control meant safety. Safety meant he could finally breathe. Behind him, the wheelchair's wheel creaked. A servant had bumped it while dusting. Levian didn't turn around. "Leave," he said. The servant fled. Alone, Levian stared at the bloodstain. It had taken 3 minutes for the ambulance to arrive. 3 minutes of Milo screaming. 3 minutes of Levian holding his pup's hand, whispering promises he didn't know how to keep. "You're going to be okay. Daddy's here. I won't let anything hurt you again." The first promise had been a lie. The second had come too late. But the third, Levian would make it true. Even if he had to watch every second of his son's life through a screen. Even if it meant never looking away again. The cameras were coming. And with them, the illusion of control. But control, Levian would learn, was nothing compared to what he was about to lose. If you've ever felt the crushing weight of being too late to save someone you love, you need to hear what happened next. The cameras blinked red in the darkness. 47 of them. Levian had counted. Living room, 8. Kitchen, 6. Milo's bedroom, 12, angled to cover every approach to the bed, every path to the window, every shadow where danger might hide. The monitors lined his office wall like a gallery of guilt. At first, he watched everything. Dr. Castellan arrived at 9 a.m. for physical therapy. Levian watched her position Milo's legs, counting how many times she sighed when the pup didn't respond fast enough. 3 sighs. She lasted 2 weeks. The next therapist smiled too much. Artificial brightness that made Milo flinch. Gone in 5 days. A rotating cast of caregivers followed. Each one hired with pristine references. Each one dismissed the moment Levian saw something he didn't like. Hands that moved too quickly. Voices that grew impatient when Milo dropped his spoon. Eyes that looked away when the pup asked, "Will I ever run again?" No one knew how to answer that question, so they avoided it. Avoided him, The penthouse filled with people, but it felt empty. Milo stopped asking questions. He sat in his wheelchair near the window, staring at the park below where other children played. His fingers traced patterns on the armrest. Circles, spirals, endless loops that went nowhere. Levian saw it all. The way Milo's shoulders hunched when the morning nurse spoke too loudly. The way his pup flinched when the physical therapist stretched his legs. The way he cried, silently, after everyone left for the night. Chest hitching, tears sliding down his cheeks. Small fists pressed against his useless legs. That's when Levian stopped watching. Not because he didn't care, because caring was breaking him. Every sob felt like a knife between his ribs. Every moment of his pup's loneliness was a reminder that money couldn't fix this. Power couldn't heal this. Control couldn't erase the blood on the marble. So Levian did what powerful men do when the world becomes unbearable. He delegated. The cameras still recorded. The staff still rotated. But Levian stopped reviewing the footage. He told himself it was efficiency, trust in his security team, confidence in the vetting process. But late at night, when the penthouse grew quiet and the city lights blurred through his office window, Levian knew the truth. He was a coward, the ruthless alpha mafia king who'd built an empire on fear and precision, who'd ended lives with a phone call, who'd crushed rivals without hesitation, couldn't bear to watch his own son suffer. The monitors glowed, 47 screens showing 47 empty rooms. And somewhere in one of them, Milo sat alone. Levian poured another drink. He didn't look up. The Omega arrived during a rainstorm. Levian barely looked up from his desk when the intercom buzzed. "Mr. Blackmoor, the final candidate is here for the caregiver interview. Send him in." The door opened. Rain scent filled the room first. Clean, cool, stubborn, somehow like earth refusing to wash away. Then the Omega stepped inside. Male, mid-20s, thin frame, dark hair plastered to his forehead, clothes damp despite the umbrella folded in his grip. His eyes, gray, steady, stayed lowered in the traditional Omega deference, but his spine stayed straight. Levian gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit." The Omega sat, placed his umbrella carefully against the chair leg, folded his hands in his lap. Levian slid the tablet across the desk. "Your references are adequate. Experience with children is noted. You'll be responsible for daily care, meals, engagement activities. Therapists handle the medical components. You handle everything else." The Omega didn't reach for the tablet. "I have a question first," he said. Levian's jaw tightened. No one interrupted him. Not his soldiers. Not his rivals. Certainly not an Omega applying for a job. "Go ahead. Does your pup like noise or quiet?" Levian blinked. Of all the questions he'd expected, salary, hours, responsibilities, security clearances, that wasn't one of them. "What?" The Omega met his eyes. Brief, controlled, then lowered his gaze again. "Some children feel safe with sound. Music, talking, movement. It reminds them they're not alone." His voice was quiet, but not weak. "Other children need silence. Too much noise feels like pressure, like drowning." Levian stared at him. 12 caregivers had sat in that chair. Not one had asked about Milo. They'd asked about pay, days off, whether they'd have their own room, if the Alpha's reputation would put them in danger. This Omega had asked if his pup liked noise. Levian's voice came out rougher than intended. "He used to like music, before the accident. And after, he doesn't like anything." The Omega nodded slowly. "Then I'll start with quiet." Levian pushed the tablet forward again. "Sign the contract. You start tomorrow." The Omega didn't move. "I need to know one more thing," he said. "What? When your pup is scared, does he cry out loud? Or does he go silent?" Something cracked in Levian's chest. Silent. Milo went silent. He'd learned, in 6 weeks, that crying didn't bring comfort. It brought worried faces and clinical assessments and therapists who wrote notes on clipboards instead of holding his hand. So Milo stopped crying out loud. He cried in the dark, alone, when he thought no one was watching. And Levian had seen it all on the cameras he could no longer bear to watch. "Silent," Levian said. The Omega's expression didn't change, but something in his scent shifted. The rain smell deepened, turned softer. Sadness, Levian realized. This stranger was sad for his pup. "I'll pay attention," the Omega said simply. He signed the contract without reading it. Levian watched him leave, umbrella in hand, rain scent lingering in the office like a promise. He didn't ask the Omega's name, didn't review his background check a second time, didn't think about why that question. Does he cry out loud or go silent had felt like being seen through bulletproof glass. He told himself it was just another hire. Another temporary solution until someone better came along. But that night, when Levian finally glanced at the monitors, he saw the Omega in the kitchen. And Milo was laughing. The laughter came from the kitchen. Levian froze in the hallway, one hand on the office door, briefcase still gripping in the other. That sound, high, bright, unguarded, hadn't existed in this penthouse for 43 days. He'd counted. Slowly, Levian set down the briefcase, moved toward the kitchen entrance. Stopped just outside the doorway, hidden by the angle of the wall. Inside, chaos bloomed. Milo sat in his wheelchair at the kitchen island, wooden spoons clutched in both fists. He banged them against a metal mixing bowl. Clang, clang, clang. Grinning so wide his missing front tooth showed, the Omega stood at the stove, stirring something in a pot. Without turning, he banged a wooden spoon against his own pot in response. Clang, 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 clang. Milo burst into giggles. The Omega kept cooking. Again, Milo banged 3 times. The Omega matched him. 3 clangs. Faster, Milo demanded. The rhythm accelerated. Spoons against metal became a conversation. Milo's timing grew confident, playful, slightly offbeat in the way children's joy always is. The Omega never corrected him. Never said careful or too loud or you're making a mess. He just played. Levian's chest felt too tight. This was the 3rd day the Omega, Ashen, he'd finally learned the name, had been in the house. 3 days. And already the penthouse felt different. Not louder, not chaotic, warmer. Milo's physical therapist had commented on it that morning. He's more engaged today, made eye contact during stretches. That's progress. The morning nurse had noticed too. He ate his entire breakfast without prompting. First time this week. Levian had dismissed it as coincidence. But now, watching his pup laugh over rhythm games with kitchen spoons, coincidence felt like a lie he'd told himself. "Ashen," Milo said suddenly, "can we eat on the floor?" Levian tensed. The dining table had been custom-built, wheelchair accessible, $8,000 of ergonomic design to make meals easier. Milo hated it. Ashen turned off the stove. "Why the floor?" "Because it's different." The Omega studied him, then nodded. "Okay." He lifted the pot, grabbed 2 bowls and walked to the living room, spread a blanket on the floor near the couch, set the bowls down. Then he returned to the kitchen, lifted Milo, chair and all, and wheeled him to the blanket's edge. "Can you slide down?" Ashen asked. "Or do you want help?" Milo bit his lip, thinking, deciding. "Help," he whispered. Ashen knelt, slid his arms under Milo's legs and back, lifted him carefully, slowly, and settled him on the blanket. Milo's legs sprawled awkwardly. Useless, a reminder of everything that had been stolen. But Ashen didn't adjust them, didn't rearrange Milo's body into something more dignified. He just sat down cross-legged beside the pup and handed him a spoon. "Careful," Ashen said. "It's hot." They ate on the floor. Milo talked about the birds he'd seen outside the window that morning. 3 pigeons and a crow. The crow had scared the pigeons away, and Milo thought that was funny because crows were smaller but meaner. Ashen listened to every word, asked questions, laughed when Milo mimicked the crow's caw. Didn't once mention therapy or walking or the wheelchair parked 5 feet away like a silent guardian. Levian watched from the hallway, invisible, irrelevant. His security team could have been standing beside him. His rivals could have been plotting his death. The entire city could have been burning. None of it mattered, because in that moment his pup was happy. And the Omega who'd made it happen hadn't used medicine or authority or expensive equipment. He'd used presence. Levian's phone buzzed. Business. Territory disputes. A shipment that needed approval. He silenced it, turned back to his office. But for the first time in 43 days, the weight in his chest felt lighter. The cameras were still recording. And tonight, Levian decided he might actually watch. When power fails, sometimes all it takes is one person willing to sit on the floor. But what the cameras were about to reveal would shatter everything the Alpha thought he knew. Levian waited until 2 a.m. to open the surveillance feed. The penthouse was silent, his office darker than necessary. The glow from the monitors cast pale blue light across his desk. His hands, the tumbler of whiskey he hadn't touched in an hour. He told himself this was routine, standard security review, making sure the new caregiver followed protocol. But his finger hesitated over the playback button for the living room camera, because part of him knew. Once he started watching, something would change. He pressed play. The timestamp read 8:47 p.m. After dinner, after Milo's bath, after the evening nurse had checked vitals and left for the night. The screen showed the living room from the corner angle. Wide shot, everything visible. Milo sat on the floor near the couch, back propped against cushions. His wheelchair stood empty beside him. His legs stretched out in front of him. Thin, motionless, still wearing the compression sleeves the therapist insisted on. Ashen sat 5 feet away, cross-legged, hands resting on his knees. Neither of them spoke. Levian leaned forward. This wasn't therapy. No exercises. No instructions. No clinical assessment of progress. Just sitting. Then Ashen's breathing changed. Slow. Deliberate. Inhale for 4 counts. Hold. Exhale for 6. Milo watched him, curious. Ashen didn't explain, didn't instruct, just breathed. After 30 seconds, Milo tried to match him. His first attempt was too fast. Shallow, anxious. Ashen's rhythm didn't change. Steady, reliable, a metronome of calm. Milo tried again. This time, his breathing slowed. Levian watched his pup's shoulders drop. Watched tension leak out of his small frame like water from a cracked vessel. For 3 minutes, they breathed together. Then Ashen slid a metal mixing bowl across the floor. It stopped halfway between them. Milo blinked. What? Push it back, Ashen said quietly. Milo hesitated, then stretched forward, palms flat on the hardwood, and shoved the bowl toward the Omega. Ashen pushed it back. Milo pushed it again, back and forth. A game with no rules, no winners, no stakes. Just presence. Just connection. Milo started laughing. Not the loud, performative laughter adults expect from children. The quiet kind. The real kind. The kind that meant safety. Levian's throat tightened. On screen, Ashen smiled. Small. Genuine. Again? He asked. Again. The bowl slid across the floor. Back. Forth. Back. Forth. Milo's arms began to shake from the effort of holding himself upright. Reaching, pushing. He didn't stop. Didn't complain. This wasn't therapy. It was play. And play, Levian realized with something close to horror, had been missing from his pup's life since the accident. Every interaction had become clinical, purposeful, designed to fix, strengthen, rehabilitate. No one had asked if Milo wanted to play. No one had sat on the floor and pushed a bowl back and forth for no reason except to hear him laugh. The timestamp ticked forward. 9:03 p.m. Ashen set the bowl aside. Tired? Milo nodded. Want to go to bed? Or stay here a little longer? Stay. Okay. Ashen shifted, settling against the couch base. He didn't touch Milo, didn't invade his space, just existed nearby. Milo's eyes grew heavy. His head tipped sideways, coming to rest against Ashen's shoulder. The Omega went still. Then, very slowly, he adjusted his position so Milo could lean more comfortably. On screen, Levian watched his pup fall asleep. Not in his custom bed with the medical-grade mattress. Not after sedative tea or white noise machines or the careful rituals the sleep specialist had prescribed. Just sleep, because he felt safe. Levian's hand shook as he reached for the whiskey. Drank. The burn didn't register. His mind replayed the last 6 weeks. The therapists who'd treated Milo like a problem to solve. The nurses who'd performed tasks with efficiency but no warmth. The caregivers who'd quit because a paralyzed pup was too difficult, too depressing, too much work. And then this Omega, this quiet, unremarkable man who'd asked about noise and silence, who'd sat on the floor and breathed, who'd played a game with a mixing bowl like it was the most important thing in the world. Because to Milo it was. Levian closed the laptop. The office felt colder. He'd built an empire on control, on seeing everything, on eliminating threats before they materialized. But the cameras hadn't caught danger. They'd caught absence. The absence of patience. The absence of dignity. The absence of someone who saw Milo as a child instead of a tragedy. Until now, the Alpha finally understood. Surveillance reveals everything except what you failed to see. And what came next would break him completely. 3 nights later, Levian opened the surveillance feed out of habit. Not paranoia, not suspicion, something else. Something that felt uncomfortably like gratitude. He wanted to see what Ashen did when no one was watching. Wanted proof that the warmth was real, that his pup hadn't just found another person who would eventually disappoint him. The timestamp read 7:34 p.m. Milo's bedroom. Low lighting. The camera angle showed the bed, the wheelchair, the window overlooking the city. Milo sat on the floor beside his bed, back against the mattress. His small fists slammed against his thighs, once, twice, 3 times. I hate them. His voice cracked. Raw. Furious. I hate them. They don't work. I hate them. Levian's entire body went rigid. He reached for the intercom button. Ready to call Ashen, the nurse, anyone, but Ashen was already there. On screen, the Omega entered the bedroom. No rush, no panic. He crossed the room in 4 measured steps and knelt in front of Milo. Milo's fists kept hitting. Harder now. His face twisted with rage and grief and something too big for a 4-year-old body to contain. They're stupid. They're broken. I want them to work. Tears streamed down his cheeks. His breathing hitched, jagged, on the edge of hyperventilating. Levian surged to his feet. This was wrong. This was too much. His pup was breaking and he needed to. On screen, Ashen spoke. I know. 2 words. Quiet. Steady. Not it's okay. Not you'll walk again. Not be strong. Just, I know. Milo's fist slowed. His eyes found Ashen's face through the tears. You don't know, Milo sobbed. You can walk. Everyone can walk except me. You're right, Ashen said. I don't know what it feels like, but I know it hurts. Milo's breath shuddered. It hurts so much. I believe you. Ashen didn't reach for him. Didn't try to stop the hitting or the crying or the rage. He just knelt there, present, unafraid of Milo's pain. Then he did something that made Levian's vision blur. Ashen placed Milo's small hands on his own knees. Tell me what you miss, he said softly. Milo's fingers pressed into Ashen's legs, feeling the muscle, the warmth, the movement that had been stolen from him. Running, Milo whispered. I miss running. What did running feel like? Fast, like flying, like I could go anywhere. Ashen nodded. Close your eyes. Milo obeyed. Ashen shifted his weight slowly, deliberate, his knees bent, straightened, muscles flexing under Milo's palms. This is how your legs moved, Ashen said quietly. Feel that? The push, the release, the rhythm. Milo's breath steadied. Now imagine, Ashen continued, voice low, hypnotic. That movement didn't disappear. It just changed. Wheels move. Hands move. Your heart moves blood through your body right now. Even though you're sitting still. Milo's eyes opened. Red. swollen, but focused. Movement doesn't end, Ashen said. It transforms. He described it like a story, like magic. The way wheels could spin fast as running. The way strong arms could take you anywhere legs once did. The way forward wasn't always the same path, but it was still forward. Levian sank back into his chair. His hands gripped the desk edge hard enough to hurt, because he'd never said any of this to his pup. He'd promised doctors and therapy and experimental treatments. He'd promised protection and safety and that nothing would hurt Milo again. But he'd never promised that life could still feel like flying. On screen, Milo's breathing returned to normal. The crying stopped. "Will I always be sad about my legs?" Milo asked. "Sometimes," Ashen said honestly. "And that's okay. Sadness isn't wrong. It's just sadness. Do you get sad?" "Yes." "About what?" Ashen was quiet for a moment. "About people who hurt when I can't fix it." Milo leaned forward. His small hand touched Ashen's cheek. "You're not supposed to fix me," Milo said seriously. "The doctors said so. They said I'm broken." "You're not broken." Ashen's voice turned fierce, protective. "You're different now. Different isn't broken." Something in Levian's chest shattered. Not broke, shattered. Because his pup, his beautiful, brave, suffering pup, believed he was broken. And Levian had let him believe it. Every rotation of therapists, every frustrated sigh, every clinical assessment that measured Milo's body against what it used to be instead of what it was. All of it had told Milo, "You are less now." But this Omega, this stranger Levian had hired without even looking at him, was teaching Milo that he was enough. On screen, Ashen helped Milo into bed, adjusted the blankets, left a small nightlight on. "Will you stay?" Milo asked. "Until you fall asleep. What if I get sad again? Then I'll listen again." Milo's eyes closed. Ashen sat on the floor beside the bed, back against the wall, and waited. Levian watched the entire thing, watched his pup's breathing even out, watched Ashen stay for 20 minutes after Milo fell asleep, just to be certain. Watched him finally stand, check the blankets one last time, and leave the room with steps so quiet the camera barely registered the movement. Levian closed the laptop. His hands were shaking. His empire, 3 cities, countless soldiers, power that could end lives with a phone call, meant nothing compared to what he'd just witnessed. The cameras had finally shown him the truth. He'd been protecting his pup's body, but Ashen was protecting his soul. Levian didn't sleep. He sat in his office as dawn crept across the city, turning the sky from black to gray to pale gold. The whiskey bottle stood empty on his desk. His empire felt like a mausoleum. All this power, all this control, all these cameras capturing every moment of his pup's life. And he'd been too afraid to watch, too afraid to see Milo's pain because witnessing it meant acknowledging his own failure. The accident hadn't just paralyzed his pup. It had paralyzed him. Levian had responded the only way he knew how, with force, with systems, with surveillance and security and the illusion that if he controlled every variable, nothing bad could happen again. But control couldn't hold Milo at night when the sadness came. Control couldn't validate his grief or tell him different wasn't broken. Control couldn't sit on the floor and push a mixing bowl back and forth until laughter replaced tears. And Omega had done that. A quiet, unremarkable man Levian had dismissed without a second glance. Ashen. The name felt significant now, like ash, soft, gray, the remnant of something burned away, but also stubborn, persistent, the thing that remained after fire consumed everything else. Levian had built his empire on fear. Ashen had earned Milo's trust with presence. The contrast felt like judgment. His phone buzzed. Business. Always business. A shipment delayed. A territory dispute escalating. A rival family making moves that required his attention. Levian silenced it. Let them wait. Let the city burn if it wanted to. Right now, his pup was sleeping 20 feet away, and for the first time in 6 weeks, Milo had fallen asleep feeling safe instead of broken. That mattered more than empires. Levian stood. His reflection caught in the dark window, tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of alpha presence that made people step aside on instinct. But his eyes looked hollow. When had he last held his pup? Not transferred him from wheelchair to bed. Not carried him to the car for doctor's appointments. Held him, the way Ashen had last night, careful and gentle, treating Milo like something precious instead of fragile. Levian's jaw tightened. He'd been so focused on protecting Milo from the world, he'd forgotten to protect him from loneliness. From the crushing isolation of being different in a house full of people who saw him as a patient, a responsibility, a tragedy. Ashen saw him as a child. And that simple shift in perspective had changed everything. Levian made a decision. He crossed to his desk, pressed the intercom. "Have Ashen meet me in my office," he said. "Now." The response came immediately. "Yes, Mr. Blackmoor." Levian sat down, poured himself another drink. His hands no longer shook. This conversation would be difficult, humbling, the kind of vulnerability ruthless alphas didn't show. But Milo deserved better than a father who hid behind cameras. And Ashen deserved the truth. Some confessions require more courage than violence ever did. What happened next would redefine everything the alpha thought he knew about strength. Ashen entered the office at 6:47 a.m. His hair was damp from a shower. His clothes simple, gray sweater, dark pants. He smelled like rain again, but underneath it, something warmer. Cinnamon, Milo's favorite spice. He'd been making breakfast. Levian gestured to the chair. "Sit." Ashen sat, his hands folded in his lap. His posture calm but not submissive, present without challenge. The silence stretched. Levian had rehearsed this, planned his words carefully. But now, facing the Omega who'd done in 3 days what Levian couldn't do in 6 weeks, the script felt inadequate. "I have cameras," Levian said finally, "hidden throughout the penthouse. 47 of them." Ashen's expression didn't change. "I know," he said. Levian blinked. "You know. I noticed them the first day. Small lenses in the ceiling fixtures. Reflective surfaces angled wrong. You're thorough. And you stayed anyway." "Yes." "Why?" Ashen met his eyes. Steady, unflinching. "Because you weren't watching to hurt him," Ashen said quietly. "You were watching because you're terrified." The words hit like a fist to the sternum. Levian's jaw tightened. "I'm not. You are." Ashen's voice remained gentle. "You're terrified something will happen to Milo again. That you'll miss it. That you'll be too late." Silence. "So you installed cameras," Ashen continued, "and you watched everyone who came near him. And when watching became too painful, you stopped. But you kept the cameras running because at least then someone was seeing him." Levian's throat felt raw. How did this Omega understand him better than he understood himself? "I watch the feeds now," Levian admitted. "I've seen what you do with him. And I don't understand it." Ashen tilted his head slightly, curious. "What don't you understand?" "How you made him laugh in 3 days when I couldn't make him smile in 6 weeks. How you knew exactly what he needed. How you," Levian's voice cracked, "how you made my pup believe he isn't broken. Because he isn't. His legs don't work." His legs changed. He didn't. Levian stood abruptly, paced to the window. The city sprawled below, his territories, his empire, his domain. None of it mattered. "I can pay you anything," Levian said without turning. "Triple salary. Your own property. Protection. Anything you want." "I don't want money." "Then what do you want?" "Permission to stay." Levian turned. "You have that. You're employed. Not as staff." Ashen's voice remained quiet but firm. "I want to stay because Milo needs someone who sees him, not as a patient, not as a responsibility, as a pup who's scared and sad and learning how to live in a body that feels like a stranger." "I see him. Do you?" The question wasn't cruel, just honest, and Levian couldn't answer it, because the truth was he'd been looking at Milo through cameras, through doctors' reports, through therapists' progress notes. He hadn't been seeing him, not the way Ashen did. I'm his father, Levian said. I should be able to. You're also grieving, Ashen interrupted gently. You lost something too, the future you imagined. The pup who would run and play and inherit your empire without limitations. Levian's hands clenched into fists. That grief is real, Ashen continued. But Milo doesn't need you to grieve. He needs you to show up. I am showing up. I'm here. I provide. Presence isn't the same as proximity. The words struck like lightning. Levian stared at the Omega who should have been afraid of him, should have been intimidated by his power, should have been grateful for the opportunity to work in his home. Instead, Ashen sat calmly in the chair, telling him truths no one else dared to speak. Stay, Levian said finally. Not as staff, as whatever Milo needs you to be. Ashen nodded. Thank you. Don't thank me. You're saving my pup. No, Ashen said quietly. I'm just reminding him he was never lost. He stood, moved toward the door. Ashen, the Omega paused. The cameras stay, Levian said, but I'll stop hiding behind them. Ashen smiled. Small, genuine. Good, he said, because Milo's been asking when his father will eat breakfast with him. The door closed. Levian stood alone in his office. For the first time in 6 weeks, he knew exactly what he needed to do. The Alpha finally understood. Protection without presence is just another cage. But the real transformation, it was only beginning. Breakfast became a ritual, not the formal, silent affairs Levian used to conduct while reviewing reports on his tablet. Real breakfast. On the living room floor, Levian sat cross-legged on Ashen's blanket, tie loosened, jacket discarded. Milo perched beside him, wheelchair abandoned near the couch, pancakes cut into small bites on his plate. Ashen cooked. They ate, and for the first time since the accident, Levian's penthouse felt like a home. The crow came back, Milo announced through a mouthful of pancake. 3 times. Did he scare the pigeons again? Levian asked. Yes, but one pigeon stayed. The gray one. He wasn't scared. Brave pigeon. Ashen says sometimes the small ones are the bravest. Levian glanced at the Omega, who was pouring juice with careful precision. Ashen's lips quirked. I said sometimes size doesn't determine courage. Same thing, Milo said confidently. They finished eating. Ashen collected the plates. Milo leaned against Levian's arm, warm and solid and alive. Papa. Levian's chest tightened. Milo hadn't called him that in weeks. Yes. Do you still wish my legs worked? The question should have been devastating. Instead, it felt like an opening. Levian chose his words carefully. I wish you didn't have to hurt. But no, I don't wish you were different. You're perfect exactly as you are. Milo looked up at him, searching. Really? Really? Even though I can't run? Even though you're still my pup, still brave, still strong, still everything I could ever want. Milo's eyes filled with tears, but not the broken kind, the relieved kind. Ashen said you'd say that, Milo whispered. He did. He said you were just scared. But that scared doesn't mean you stopped loving me. Levian pulled Milo into his lap, held him the way he should have been holding him all along. I never stopped loving you, Levian said fiercely. Not for 1 second. I'm sorry I made you think I did. Milo buried his face in Levian's chest. It's okay, Papa. But it wasn't okay. And Levian would spend the rest of his life proving that. The weeks that followed reshaped everything. Physical therapy continued, but now Milo approached it with determination instead of resignation. Because Ashen had taught him that progress looked different for everyone. The cameras still recorded, but Levian watched them differently now. Not to hunt for mistakes, but to learn. To see the small moments of joy he might otherwise miss. Ashen stayed. Not as staff. Not as a caregiver. As family. He moved into the guest room overlooking the garden. Filled the kitchen with spices and laughter. Taught Milo how to cook from his wheelchair. How to find independence in small victories. How to exist in a body that worked differently without feeling less. And slowly, carefully, Levian learned too. Learned to sit on the floor. Learned to listen instead of fix. Learned that love wasn't about protection, it was about presence. One night, 3 months after the Omega arrived, Levian found Ashen on the balcony. The city glittered below. The air smelled like rain. "Thank you," Levian said quietly. Ashen turned. "For what?" "For seeing him. For staying. For teaching me how to be his father again." "You were always his father." "I was a ghost haunting my own house." Ashen smiled. "Not anymore. No, not anymore." Inside, through the glass doors, Milo laughed at something on the television. The sound filled the penthouse like sunlight, and Levian finally understood what strength really meant. Not control, not surveillance, not the power to eliminate threats, but the courage to be present, even when presence meant facing your own failures. The threat came on a Tuesday. Levian was in his office when the security alert flashed across his screen. Unauthorized access attempt. East Perimeter. 3 individuals, armed, attempting entry through the service entrance. Rivals. The Castellano family, most likely. They'd been testing his borders for weeks, interpreting his recent absence from Mafia affairs as weakness. They thought the Ruthless Alpha had gone soft. They were wrong. Levian stood, buttoned his jacket, checked the weapon holstered at his side. Then he glanced at the monitor showing the living room. Milo and Ashen sat on the floor, building something with blocks. His pup's laughter drifted through the intercom, bright and unguarded. Safe. Happy. Levian's expression went cold. He pressed the intercom. Lockdown protocol. Now. Throughout the penthouse, reinforced barriers slid into place. Bulletproof shutters sealed the windows. The elevator locked. The panic room entrance opened silently in Milo's bedroom. Ashen looked up at the nearest camera. Calm. Trusting. Levian had told him about the security measures. About the enemies who might someday come. Ashen had simply nodded and asked, "Will Milo be safe?" "Always," Levian had promised. Now, watching Ashen guide Milo toward the panic room without panic, without fear, Levian felt something shift inside him. His empire had always been built on fear, but his family would be protected by something stronger. Precision. Levian left the office. His soldiers met him in the foyer, 6 of his best, armed, waiting for orders. "Non-lethal if possible," Levian said quietly. "But make it clear. Anyone who threatens this house doesn't get a second chance." They moved as one. The confrontation lasted for minutes. The Castellanos learned, in those 4 minutes, that the Alpha hadn't grown weak. He'd grown focused, and a focused predator was infinitely more dangerous than a reckless one. By the time Levian returned to the penthouse, the threats had been neutralized. Messages sent. Warnings delivered. The lockdown disengaged. Levian found Ashen and Milo in the panic room, reading a book by emergency lighting. Milo looked up. "Papa, did you win?" "Yes." "Are the bad people gone?" "They won't come back." Milo nodded, satisfied. "Good, because Ashen said you'd protect us." "Always," Levian said. He met Ashen's eyes over his pup's head. The Omega's expression held no judgment, no fear, just quiet confidence. Because Ashen understood something the enemies never would. Levian Blackmoor had always been ruthless. But now he was ruthless with purpose. And anyone who threatened his family wouldn't just face an Alpha King. They'd face a father who'd learned that true strength meant protecting what you love. Not with surveillance or control or fear, but with presence, precision, and the absolute certainty that mercy had limits. The enemies watching from the shadows had made a fatal miscalculation. They'd seen an Alpha who'd softened. They hadn't seen the fire underneath. And by the time they realized their mistake, it was already too late. The Castellanos were foot soldiers. Levian knew this within an hour of the interrogation. They sat bound in the basement safe room, one with a broken nose, another with a dislocated shoulder, all 3 with the kind of fear in their eyes that came from realizing they'd miscalculated badly. "Who sent you?" Levian's voice was calm, clinical. The one with the broken nose spat blood. We don't answer to. Levian's fist connected with his jaw. Not hard enough to break it, just hard enough to remind him that mercy was a choice, not a guarantee. Who sent you? We were hired, the man gasped. Contract job. We don't know names. You know something. Silence. Levian nodded to his head of security. A photograph was placed on the table between them. The man's eyes widened. You recognize him, Levian said. The Omega. We were told to watch him. Report his location. Everything stopped. Levian's voice dropped to a whisper. Why? I don't know. I swear. We were just supposed to confirm he was here. Then what? The man's face went pale. Then someone else was coming. Levian climbed the stairs back to the penthouse with ice in his veins. The attack hadn't been about territory. It had been about Ashen. Someone was hunting his Omega. His Omega. The possessiveness of the thought should have surprised him. Didn't. Ashen had become essential. Not just to Milo. To him. To the fragile peace they'd built on the living room floor over pancakes and mixing bowls, and laughter that felt like sunlight after years of darkness. He found Ashen in the kitchen washing dishes. Milo sat at the island, drawing pictures of crows and pigeons with crayons. Ashen looked up. His expression shifted immediately, reading Levian's tension like it was written in bold text. Milo, Ashen said gently, why don't you take your drawings to your room? I'll come see them in a few minutes. But I'm not done with. Please. Something in Ashen's tone made Milo obey without argument. He gathered his crayons, wheeled himself toward the hallway, and disappeared. The moment he was gone, Ashen turned to Levian. They weren't here for you, Levian said. Not a question. Ashen's hands stilled in the soapy water. No. Who's looking for you? Someone I left behind. An alpha. Ashen's silence was confirmation enough. Levian crossed the kitchen in 3 strides. Stopped just close enough that Ashen had to look up to meet his eyes. Tell me everything, Levian said. And don't lie to protect me. I need to know what we're dealing with. You think I'm going to let someone take you from this house? From Milo? Levian's voice turned hard. From me? Ashen's breath caught. You're packed now, Levian said. That means you're protected. So tell me who's coming, and I'll make sure they never reach you. Ashen's eyes glistened. You don't know what he's capable of. Neither does he. The promise hung between them, heavy, absolute, and utterly sincere. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, a storm was building. They sat in Levian's office after midnight. Milo asleep, the penthouse locked down, the city quiet beyond the bulletproof glass. Ashen held a cup of tea he hadn't touched. His fingers traced the rim, nervous, repetitive, the only sign of how much this was costing him. His name is Draven Kale, Ashen said finally. He's an alpha from the Northern Territories. Old family, old money, old ideas about what Omegas are for. Levian's jaw tightened. You were bonded to him. No, almost. Ashen's voice went flat. He claimed me when I was 19, said it was fate, said Omegas like me needed strong alphas to give us purpose. And you believed him. I was young, alone. He was charming at first, protective. Ashen laughed bitterly. I didn't realize protection and possession were the same thing to him until it was too late. Levian waited. He controlled everything. Ashen continued. What I wore, where I went, who I spoke to. When I tried to leave the first time, he found me within hours. Broke my wrist. Said it was for my own good. Levian's hands clenched into fists. The second time, I was smarter. I planned for months. Saved money. Changed my name. Moved cities. Ashen finally looked up. That was 3 years ago. I thought I was finally free. But he's been searching. Always. Draven doesn't let go of what he considers his. You were never his. Try telling him that. Levian stood, paced to the window. His reflection stared back, cold, calculating, dangerous. Why target me? he asked. Because I'm here. Because you're powerful enough to be a threat to him. Because... Ashen's voice dropped. Because he knows if he can't have me, he'll destroy everything I care about. Milo. Yes. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Levian turned. You're thinking about leaving. Ashen stood too. I have to. If I stay, Draven will come here. And when he does, I'll end him. You don't understand. He has resources, connections. He's not like the Castellanos. He's not as dangerous as me. Ashen stopped. Levian crossed the room until they stood inches apart. You think I built this empire by being reasonable? Levian's voice was quiet, lethal. You think I earned my reputation by showing mercy to people who threatened what's mine? Milo isn't. I'm not talking about Milo. Ashen's breath hitched. You saved my pup, Levian said. You saved me. You walked into this broken house and made it a home again. His hand lifted, cupped Ashen's jaw with surprising gentleness. You think I'm going to let some territorial alpha take that away? He'll hurt you, hurt Milo, hurt everyone near me. Then he'll die trying. Ashen's eyes filled with tears. Levian. Stay, Levian said. Trust me. Let me protect you the way you protected my son. What if I can't? Then I'll prove it to you. Ashen leaned into the touch. Just slightly. Just enough. He's coming, Ashen whispered. Soon. Good, Levian said. Let him. Because some threats needed to be eliminated. And Levian Blackmoor had never been better at elimination than when he had something worth protecting. Milo knew something was wrong. Children always knew. He sat in his wheelchair by the window, quieter than usual, watching Ashen cook breakfast with less rhythm, less joy. Levian saw it in the cameras. The way his pup's shoulders hunched. The way his small fingers gripped the armrests. Fear. Not of danger. Of abandonment. Levian found them in the kitchen. Ashen was stirring oatmeal mechanically. Milo wasn't banging spoons. Ashen's leaving, isn't he? Milo said suddenly. The wooden spoon clattered into the pot. Ashen turned, stricken. Milo, Everyone leaves. The doctors, the nurses, all of them. They say they'll stay and then they leave. I'm not leaving. You're thinking about it. Milo's voice cracked. I can tell. You're sad. And when people get sad here, they leave. Ashen crossed the kitchen. Knelt in front of the wheelchair. I level. You're right, he said quietly. I was thinking about leaving. Milo's face crumpled. But not because of you, Ashen continued quickly. Because I was scared. Scared that staying would put you in danger. From what? From someone from my past. Someone who wants to hurt me. And I thought if I left, you'd be safer. Milo's small hand reached out, touched Ashen's cheek. That's dumb, Milo said seriously. Despite everything, Ashen laughed. Yeah. Papa says we're a pack now. Packs don't leave each other. They fight together. From the kitchen doorway, Levian felt his chest constrict. Papa says we're a pack. He'd said that once, after the Castellano attack, trying to reassure Milo that they were safe. His pup had been listening. Your papa is right, Ashen said softly. We are a pack. So you'll stay? Aye. He's staying, Levian said, entering the kitchen. He placed a hand on Ashen's shoulder. Grounding. No one is leaving. Milo brightened immediately. Promise. Promise. Even when the bad person comes? Levian crouched beside Ashen. 2 alphas. 1 ruthless. 1 gentle. Kneeling before a pup who'd become their anchor. Especially then, Levian said. Because your papa? He glanced at Ashen, saw the flicker of emotion at the word. Is family, and family doesn't run. Milo launched himself forward, arms around both their necks. Small body shaking with relief, they held him until the trembling stopped. Later, after Milo had eaten and been distracted with a new puzzle, Levian found Ashen on the balcony. The Omega stood at the railing, staring at the city lights. Thank you, Ashen said without turning. For what you said. About family. Levian joined him, their shoulders nearly touching. I meant it. I know. Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable. Just waited. Levian? Yes. When this is over. When Draven is gone. He will be. Ashen turned. Met his eyes. When he's gone, can I ask you something? Anything. Why did you let me stay? Really, it wasn't just for Milo. Levian's hand lifted, tucked a strand of hair behind Ashen's ear. The touch lingered. No, he said quietly. It wasn't just for Milo. Understanding flickered in Ashen's eyes. But first, Levian continued, we end this. Together. Together, Ashen agreed. Below them, the city hummed with life and danger and possibility. Somewhere in those streets, a predator was coming. But in this penthouse, on this balcony, two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their separate traumas stood side by side. And for the first time in 3 years, Ashen felt like he might actually survive what was coming. Because he wasn't alone anymore. Love is built in the quiet moments before war. But when the enemy finally arrived, they'd learn what a true pack was capable of. Draven Kale arrived on a Thursday. No warning. No grand entrance. Just a knock on the penthouse door at 2 p.m., while Milo napped and Ashen prepared afternoon snacks. Levian's security team had flagged him the moment he entered the building. Unknown Alpha. Aggressive posturing. Demanding access. Levian watched him on the monitor. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Expensive suit. The kind of Alpha who expected doors to open because he'd arrived. Let him up, Levian said into the comm. His head of security hesitated. Sir, he's not cleared. I know exactly who he is. Let him up. Levian crossed to the living room, positioned himself between the door and the hallway where Ashen was working. Protective stance. Deliberate. The elevator chimed. Draven stepped into the penthouse like he owned it. His eyes swept the space, assessing, calculating before landing on Levian. You must be Blackmoor. His voice was smooth, cultured. I appreciate you agreeing to meet. I didn't agree. I allowed. Draven's smile didn't reach his eyes. Semantics. I'm here for what belongs to me. Nothing in this penthouse belongs to you. My Omega disagrees. He's not your Omega. He was claimed. He was abused. Levian's voice went cold. And claims made under duress are void. Draven's expression hardened. I don't expect a Mafia king to understand the subtleties of Omega bonds. But Ashen needs guidance. Structure. He's unstable without. He's thriving. From the kitchen, a soft sound. Plates set down too carefully. Ashen appeared in the doorway. The moment Draven saw him, his entire demeanor shifted. Possessive. Hungry. Ashen. Finally. Ashen didn't move. Didn't speak. But Levian saw his hands shake. Come here, Draven commanded. We're leaving. No. The word came from Ashen. Quiet but firm. Draven's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? I said no. Ashen stepped forward. Stood beside Levian. I'm not leaving. This is my home. Your home is with me. My home is where I'm safe. Where I'm respected. Where I'm... Ashen's voice cracked. Where I'm loved. Draven's face twisted. Love? You think this Alpha loves you? He's using you. For his pup. For his convenience. The moment you're no longer useful. I die first. Levian's words cut through the room like a blade. Draven turned to him. What? I said I die first. Before I let anyone hurt him. Before I let anyone take him. Before I let you breathe the same air as him for one more second. You're threatening me. I'm promising you. The temperature in the room dropped. Draven reached for Ashen. You ungrateful. Levian moved. Fast. Precise. Brutal. One strike to Draven's wrist. The reaching hand dropped. Another to his solar plexus. Air rushed out. A third to his knee. Draven crumpled. Took 5 seconds. 5 seconds to dismantle an Alpha who'd terrorized Ashen for years. Levian crouched beside him. Voice deadly calm. You have 10 seconds to leave this building. If you ever come near him again, if you even think his name, I will erase you. Not quickly, not mercifully. I will dismantle your life piece by piece until there's nothing left but the memory of what you used to be. Draven's eyes showed fear for the first time. Do you understand? Yes. Good. Levian stood, gestured to his security. Escort him out. Add him to the blacklist. Every property. Every business. He doesn't exist in my world anymore. They dragged Draven to the elevator. The doors closed. Silence. Then Ashen's knees buckled. Levian caught him, held him as 3 years of fear and trauma finally released. It's over, Levian whispered. You're safe. Ashen believed him. The monster was gone. But the real question remained, what would they build in the space where fear used to live? 6 months later, the penthouse smelled like cinnamon and morning sunlight. Milo sat on the living room floor, no longer in his wheelchair but beside it, legs stretched out, new leg braces gleaming. He was practicing transfers with his physical therapist, determination written across his face. Almost, the therapist encouraged. 3 more inches. Milo gritted his teeth, pushed, made it into the chair on his own. I did it. Applause came from the kitchen doorway. Ashen stood there, flower on his hands, smile bright as dawn. I knew you would. Levian watched from the couch, tablet forgotten on his lap. 6 months. So much had changed. Milo had started calling Ashen Papa without hesitation. The word came naturally now, like it had always belonged in his vocabulary. The physical therapy had intensified. Milo's determination had returned. He'd never walk the way he used to, but he was mobile, independent, strong, and happy. The cameras still ran, but Levian rarely reviewed them anymore. He didn't need to watch his family through screens when he could sit beside them on the floor. Breakfast in 5 minutes, Ashen called. Floor picnic or table? Floor, Milo shouted immediately. Ashen laughed, disappeared back into the kitchen. Levian stood, crossed the room, found Ashen plating pancakes, cinnamon, Milo's favorite. Need help? Levian asked. You can carry the juice. They worked in comfortable silence. The kind that came from months of shared mornings and quiet evenings and late-night conversations on the balcony where words turned into something deeper. Levian, thank you for letting me stay, for protecting me, for... Ashen's voice softened. For choosing me. Levian set down the juice, turned Ashen to face him. You act like it was charity, he said quietly. Like you didn't save us first. I was just... You were everything we needed. Everything I needed. Levian's hand cupped Ashen's face. You gave me my son back. And then you gave me something I didn't think I deserved. What? A family. Ashen's eyes glistened. I love you, Levian said. Simple. True. I should have said it sooner. I love you too. The kiss was soft. Certain. Promise made real. From the living room, Milo's voice rang out. Are the pancakes coming, or do I have to roll in there? They broke apart, laughing. Coming, Ashen called. They carried breakfast to the living room floor, sat cross-legged on the familiar blanket. Milo between them, talking about the crows and pigeons and how the brave gray pigeon now had friends. Levian looked at his pup, thriving, loved, safe. Looked at Ashen, his omega, his partner, his home, and realized that power had never made him strong. This had family, presence, love fierce enough to destroy anyone who threatened it. The ruthless alpha mafia king had finally learned what true dominance meant. Not control, but choosing who you protect, and being chosen in return. Outside, the city hummed with danger and possibility. Inside, on a floor covered with pancakes and laughter and 3 people who'd found each other in the wreckage, there was only home.